morning, everyone. I hope you grabbed your cup of coffee and you're ready to settle down for a little quick thought that I had. You'll have to get used to me using my job and my work experiences as examples because it seems like no matter where I turn around, I've always got something new to go, oh, gee, that would be a good topic. And excuse me, I'm still battling my cold. So most of you know I'm a therapist, but I work with a lot of families, and these families are so different. Like none of them look the same. You've got families that they have adopted kids, foster kids, legal guardians of kids, their biological kids, struggling to mix them all together. It doesn't always work good because some of the adopted kids or foster kids or what have you don't have the same life experiences. They've experienced trauma and neglect and just horrible things. So it's sometimes very difficult to kind of make a cohesive family unit with all different backgrounds and experiences, right? But this got me thinking, of course, what do you think heaven's going to be like? I mean, it's going to be one big pot of mixed upness. We have like our friends, our neighbors. Jesus made us all. People around the globe. There's no divisions in heaven. Are you okay with this? It's not going to be just your unique little, niche of people that you associate with. I'm not going to associate exclusively with other therapists or just my own personal family members. Like that's just not going to happen. There's going to be people from around the globe. Christians are all over the world, and they're going to converge in the same space. Heaven, right? I actually experienced a little bit of this here in my town, as we have a very large Latino, Hispanic, Puerto Rican population too. And our church has done a lot of work to try to get everybody to be comfortable in the same space. We have like translation apps and things like that. One of our pastors actually speaks 5 languages. That's great. So he gives the announcements and all that kind of stuff in Spanish every single Sunday. But back to my topic. Does Jesus call us to kind of do the same thing on earth that he came to do? He came to lift barriers between all races, and he shared himself equally with everyone. He didn't hold himself back. In fact, that was his whole purpose, is kind of like to bring the Gentiles in, right? Like that was the whole, one of the whole things that he did, that the Jews are like, no, not them. So I stole this book from my daughter, The Deeply Formed Life by Rich Villodas. I'm going to read you just a little chunk of it because I thought it was really cool. It's on page 44 of this book, called Tensions in Brooklyn. During my childhood, the East New York section of Brooklyn was one of the most dangerous and economically poor areas in New York City. I grew up around Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Jamaicans, and African Americans. Certainly there were tensions between these groups, but one consistent place of racial and ethnic conflict was Chinese takeout restaurants and the local Korean-owned dry cleaners. Okay. I can vividly recall the tension as well as the glimmers of the healing that would resurface or surface from time to time, and have one memory in particular. As a teenager into my 20s, I would make monthly trips to the dry cleaners. For as long as I can remember, there was a massive bulletproof partition on the counter that separated the customer from the dry cleaner employee. In order to drop clothes off, one would have to put the clothes into the drop box and then talk through the clear partition, giving specific instructions. I thought all this was normal until one day the partition was removed. One day in my mid-20s, I stopped to drop off a few button-down shirts, and to my great surprise, the partition had been taken down. I was about to go back outside and make sure I was in the right place, in the same place. I mentioned how different the store looked, and the owner said in his heavy accent, "We want to build trust with our neighbors." For the first time, I was able to shake hands with someone in that space. Upon reflection of that situation, I couldn't help but think that something deeply spiritual had taken place on the corner in that neighborhood. I would find out later that a new Korean owner of that business were Christians. Something had compelled them to imagine a different way of being together. A new community was forming based not on suspicion, mistrust, and fear, but on hospitality, trust, and goodwill. In that small dry cleaner space, a metaphor of the gospel came clear as day. It was the fall of the Berlin Wall, but in my neighborhood, it was a significant act. You see, God is not simply in the business of dry cleaning our souls. He is in the business of tearing down walls and creating a new family, a new way of belonging together. One could argue that the primary fruit of the gospel is not going to heaven when you die, but rather the miraculous new family that is created out of the death and resurrection of Jesus. Racial justice and reconciliation remain two of the most urgent matters of faith and public witness. In this respect, the cross of Christ isn't just a bridge that gets us to God. It's a sledgehammer that breaks down walls that separate us. In the midst of all the confusion and anger that persist due to racial tension in our country and our world, the church must lead the way in proclaiming the message of hope, justice, and reconciliation. Christ is a sledgehammer that breaks down walls between us. Jews of the day did not like that. That was a big no-no. Gentiles, Samaritans, ew, gives you the icks just thinking about it, right? So one of Jesus' tasks on earth was to create a new family. He redrew lines, or maybe he just erased them. I don't know. He called offensive people to follow him. A tax collector, ooh, ew. Blue-collar people, the fishermen, right? And there was like carpenters. Jesus himself was a carpenter. Warriors, insurrectionists, the zealot, Simon, right? You get the picture. I don't know what all of their different, what they came from, but there's a lot of different trades or walks of life that they came from. You get the picture. He expected them to learn to appreciate each other. If you watch The Chosen, they did a pretty good job of showing the tensions in the group. I specifically remember Matthew, the tax collector, and Simon the zealot. Oh, and Peter. Ooh, he had a problem with him. Jesus even called a woman. Back in the day, women, at that time, women were not anything but house cleaners and keepers and water gatherers and things like that. They kept the sheep. They called a woman, and a troubled one at that. Mary had to have a demon removed out of her before she could follow Jesus. Also, I think she was a prostitute, if I remember correctly. So he called some unsavory characters of the day. So a new community was formed as a result of Christ's time here on earth, his death and resurrection. That created a new community. Racial tensions have threatened to overrule the world and everywhere for centuries. I don't know that we'll ever get over that. I would hope so, but if you walk through history, you'll see there's always been tension between races. It's never gone away. It's not just here in the U.S. and it's not just, African Americans and whites and Asians and blah, blah, blah. It's everywhere over the last 6,000 years. We've never completely put it aside. There's always a group that wants to bridge the gap, and then there's another group that's trying to tear down what someone else has just tried to build. Why? What makes certain people unable to see their own biases? I even see this in my families. What makes adoptive parents be a little bit more biased towards foster kids or think that all things are going to be the same? You have to treat every kid differently. You can't raise them the same. Your biological kids do not respond to the same techniques, therapy, disciplinary consequences, whatever, as your kids who've endured trauma and neglect. Completely different. So in the world of therapy, we look at nature and nurture, right? Your DNA and your environment, both are equally to blame for this, and the separation continues when people do not wish to look at themselves for how they contribute harm towards others, which in turn turns around and harms you. When we judge others by our limited understanding and standards, people are always going to fall short. I've been to other countries and I'm like, why in the heck do they do it that way? That makes no sense. It's their culture. I could look down at them or I could go, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if there's a reason behind why they did it that way. Probably. You'll always look at them as worthless if you don't try to see past your own stuff and recognize maybe they have reasons for doing some things the way that they've done them for many, many years. And maybe sometimes it's just, why do you do stuff the way, why is my dish soap in the place that I put it? Because it's where it goes, right? It doesn't go somewhere else. It goes where I put it, where I've always seen it go. I've worked with couples in my private practice a few years ago. I guess I work with couples now too. But there's one thing I would always work on immediately, and that was the saying, put down your sword. If you cannot put down this thing that you're just waiting to smack somebody with, to cut them with, you will never be able to see someone with empathy. You will always be looking for ways that they failed you and how you can cut them and make them pay. So you will now never get anywhere if you can't put down the sword. How are relationships built with others who keep bringing up your past failings and just won't let them go, or are unwilling to look at themselves for their own failings and be judged accordingly? There's that too. At some point, there has to be some neutral ground. The swords have to get laid down, and you have to allow forgiveness to creep in and empathy towards other people. The cross of Christ was the great equalizer. No one escapes death. I don't care who you are, how rich you are, how much stuff you got, how much stuff you don't got. Everybody stands before God as an equal. The person you've been battling with doesn't make a difference. Whether it's your husband, your wife, your coworker, blah, blah, that's relative, doesn't matter. That person you've been battling with, that fight will not continue past your death. And then you'll have worse problems, like trying to explain to the one who died for you why you couldn't just let it go, forgive, and allow him to help you build a bridge. Explain that one to him, right? Did you notice with the writing on the New Testament, Jesus never distanced himself from people he disagreed with? In fact, those were usually the types he went and spent the most time with, had dinner with, walked with, all the stuff. He spent a lot of time. He built relationships. He showed them unconditional love. He did not agree or condone everything they did. He did say, go and sin no more. But he did it out of love. And then in spite of that, he honored their choices. Obviously, he gave people free will. But he didn't. You don't have to agree with somebody completely to work alongside them or love on them. Do you have trouble loving people that are different than you, that do not agree with someone's chosen lifestyle or political affiliation? Hot topics right now in the US. But you can see them. You don't have to agree with their lifestyle or their politics, but you can love them and see them as Jesus did. Jesus said, follow me. He modeled for us how to act. In fact, if you feel so strongly about your political party or your the lifestyle that you feel is the right one or the correct one, and Jesus does have parameters. He has some rules around that. He said that do this, don't do that. Absolutely. Model Jesus to other people. It's not your job to bring a big stick and beat them down for the choice that they're making. Model Jesus to them. Maybe the Holy Spirit will work in there. Jesus did it lovingly. So, have you walked away from creating community? God does have a family that's a group of people who love him and have chosen to follow him. We should be the most honest, loving people on the planet. And I hope you can do that. Have a great day.